Be sure to follow me on Twitter. There you can keep up with all the updates from Comics Explained and talk to me directly. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and I am so amped up right now. I am so excited for a couple reasons. The first is because I just uploaded my trailer, my reaction to Star Wars The Force Awakens, trailer number 2, which looks amazing. The other reason is because this officially starts our series of Time Runs Out. We're getting into Time Runs Out now. We're getting into the lead up to Secret Wars 2015, which starts in like 2 weeks. So I am very psyched. That being said, in this video, we're going to focus on Hyperion. Now, Hyperion, this version is actually a standalone version. He's not tied to any of the other versions of Hyperion that we've seen in the history of Marvel Comics. So we're not really going to focus on them because they don't matter right now. Now, this version of Hyperion is actually part of Earth 13,034. Now, for those of you guys who are new, Marvel uses numerical designations to differentiate between the Earth 616 mainstream continuity and all the other alternate realities. And so we know by virtue of this numerical designation here, this takes place in a distant reality from Earth 616. Now, the way the story of Hyperion is given to us, he's basically Marvel's version of Superman. His origin story is in fact almost identical to the version of Superman. The difference here is he lands on a totally different Earth. The way that his origin is given to us, he is apparently the, the son or the child of a race of Eternals. And again, we've talked about the Eternals with regards to our Celestials video, so you're welcome to check that out if you want to. But basically, all this really means is that he's the son of a far advanced race. The problem was that this race's planet was dying. It was basically going to blow up. And so before it exploded, he was sent off into space and he landed on the planet Earth in the 13,034 reality. Now, what happens when he lands on this Earth is he's basically adopted by a man named Father. Now, there's a lot of things that are left out here. The way the story is given to us by Marvel, it's kind of a gloss over of the history of Hyperion. And that's really all we need here with this character. We don't really need an in-depth explanation because we'll see some things that are explained to us as time goes on with regards to his character. But the fact remains that when he's adopted by a man named Father, we're not actually given what Father's name is. We don't really even know if he's an actual father, if he really exists like a father to Hyperion, or if his involvement with Hyperion is more instructional. And I would go as far as to say the instructional relationship seems to be the case. And the reason why I say that is because what Father does is basically teach Hyperion what it means to be a contributing member of society. On this version of Earth, in the 13,034 reality, that Earth is far more advanced than the one in the Earth 616 continuity. And so what Father basically tells Hyperion is that it's not enough to just look at people. It's not enough to wait for a problem to happen and then try to fix it, that he can't exist in a reactionary measure. His goal or his role in life should be to guide society towards this sort of utopian ideology, so that when the time comes when humanity is ready to step into this role of a peaceful coexistence, that they'll actually be able to do it as opposed to struggle and then fail. And so what we find over the course of his life is that eventually he forms a group called the Squadron Supreme. Now, the Squadron Supreme has existed in Marvel Comics. Again, that's a group that doesn't seem to be tied into this one. But the Squadron Supreme can best be compared to the Avengers of the planet Earth, or if you wanted to make a DC analogy, the Justice League of America. But the fact remains that there comes a point in the history of the Earth 13,034 reality where an incursion happens. And again, for those of you guys who are new here, an incursion is basically what Marvel is using to end their entire multiverse. That's where two Earths appear in the sky. Now, if both Earths collide, then both realities are destroyed. But if one of the Earths is destroyed, then both realities survive. And so what happens is that while the Earths are moving towards each other over the course of this 8-hour window, that everybody in the Squadron Supreme is killed. They're destroyed trying to stop the incursion. And so Hyperion is really the only superhero left, and in fact, the only survivor of his planet left. And so as a result, he's physically able to keep the Earth separated simply by pushing on the two of them. But the problem is that there's so much power, so much pressure being given off by these Earths that they both they both explode anyway. And as a result, their realities are destroyed along with it. And so what happens is Hyperion is basically just confined to his own reality, which is basically a giant white void. That's really all it is. And so the result is that in the Earth 616 continuity, Advanced Idea Mechanics, the group called AIM, actually reaches in into the Earth 13,034 reality and plucks Hyperion out of it. Now, we're not explicitly told why they do that, but given the basis of AIM, which is basically a group that exists to try to expand its own scientific knowledge, this was most likely done to simply just explore realities, and then they just found Hyperion sitting there, and as a result, they had taken him. Now, when they did, they began kind of experimenting on him. They began sort of investigating his properties, investigating his power to see what he was capable of, but because he draws his power directly from the sun, again, much like Superman, he was virtually powerless when he was discovered by the Avengers. Now, the Avengers, led by Captain America, had arrived to basically, again, add Hyperion to their ranks, and so they had freed Hyperion. Now, from here, we actually jump forward a little bit, and what we're going to do is we're going to kind of step, I guess, a little ahead of time, jumping into Avengers issue number 34, I think. And what Avengers issue number 34 does is it basically gives us this kind of explanation with Hyperion in terms of how he's trying to cope with the world. And the reason why is because Hyperion, again, comes from a place where society was far more advanced. For him, human beings on Earth 616 are very primitive, and they operate in a very primitive way. And so one of the coolest examples we get here was when he's basically trying to solve a crime, when he's trying to fit in here. And what he does is he arrives at the home of a family whose child has gone missing. And when he initially shows up, the police there are I guess, are already there, of course, questioning the family, asking them information and different things like that, trying to figure out if they can get a lead or not. And when Hyperion appears, it basically begins to, I guess, to frighten the family. They begin to get concerned. The police, of course, are also concerned because for them, whenever superheroes appear, as a follow-up, I guess as a fallout of sorts to Civil War, the assumption is that there's always going to be some measure of violence and a vast amount of destruction. And so the police just simply can't cope with that in this small town. And so what Hyperion does is he basically bypasses the family and the police. He analyzes the carpet, he finds some DNA fragments, and then he takes to the sky. And once he takes to the sky, he begins to look over every single person that he can find and literally scan their DNA. And once he finds the boy, he takes off to meet with the boy and the person who's kidnapped him. And so again, we're not going to go too in-depth into the story because at this point it just kind of breaks down to unnecessary things, but the fact remains that this is basically Hyperion doing what he can to be an Avenger, doing what he can to fit in a world that in truth he doesn't really belong in. And so what we're going to do is we're going to bring this video to an end, because what we'll find is that once we get into Time Runs Out, Hyperion is largely going to be just kind of a mainstay of the Avengers, but once we get towards the end of Time Runs Out, he and Odin's son and Thor are going to get into this massive conflict that's really going to be biblical in terms of proportion, and it's really going to determine the fate of everything in the multiverse. With that being said, we're going to bring this video to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, let me know, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.